Welcome to the Red Ink Revival Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Patrick Norris. We're going to grow your leadership through neuroscience, psychology, and theology. Hey everybody, welcome to the Red Ink Revival Leadership Podcast. My name's Patrick Norris, and I could not be more excited than this special episode for Father's Day. First, I want to wish all you fathers happy Father's Day. And then I want to gift you with this amazing conversation with Dayton Moore. Dayton is the GM of the Kansas City Royals Major League Baseball team. In 2019, Dayton and I sat down specifically to talk about Father's Day. We talked fatherhood, marriage, and even being the son of a father who mentored his own heart and soul. There are tons of nuggets, meat and potatoes, ideas, fundamentals that cause our relationships to be enriched, and I believe you're going to hear it and be inspired and better in every venue of your life. So let's go now and let's enjoy this conversation with Dayton Moore. Well, I'm excited to share with you guys an interview today with Dayton Moore, the general manager of the Kansas City Royals. And before we jump into it, I want to give a few stats. First of all, Dayton was born in Wichita. He grew up as a Royals fan. In 2005, he had worked through a career to become the assistant to the general manager, Hall of Famer John Schuerholz of the Atlanta Braves. And then in 2006, he comes to the Kansas City Royals, and of course, we know that it has been an extraordinary career here. We, in 2014, go to the World Series, end up going 7 games with the San Francisco Giants and are 90 feet away from a win. And then we flip it, go back in 2015, and 2015 win the World Series, 5 games, New York Mets. So we welcome today our friend and the leader of the Royals tribe, Dayton Moore. Dayton, I want to say thank you for being a part of this whole interview. What a
thanks.
What a
Thanks for being here. I'm glad you're here.
I love
Appreciate
it.
what you do.
Thank you. Well, first, I want to congratulate you on the 2015 World Series championship. I just want to know, what did that championship mean to you?
You know, I get asked that question a lot, and I started asking myself that question almost from the bus back to the hotel that night. And you know, it's tough to put into words when you work so diligently and for something, and you see the celebration of your players and your staff and your community and all your fans. I mean, that's great. That's really rewarding. But you know, just reflecting a couple days later, one of the things that just really hit me, and it was really powerful. And it was simply this. It was, you know what, the neat thing about what we were able to accomplish is we convinced a group of people to come to Kansas City to work for the Royals at a point in time when the Royals weren't a popular place to work. They were young, they had young families, and through all of this journey, all of our families stayed together. The kids were relatively thriving. Families were intact, marriages stayed strong. Not to say that they didn't have struggles, not to say that some of our leaders and coaches didn't seek marriage counseling along the way because there were challenges, but that was the thing that was most rewarding, that, you know what, our family stayed together in an industry that requires, you know, so much energy, such a strong work ethic. You're under the microscope, you're dealing with criticism, and you're at a point in time in your life where professionally you got to have the throttle down, and personally you got to have the throttle down because you've got a young family that you're trying to raise. And so reflecting on that a couple days later, that's what hit me. The Holy Spirit kind of revealed that to me, and I'm like, you know what, thank you for that.
That's amazing. You know, in 2014, when we made it to the World Series, so we just beat Baltimore, and we make it to the World Series, I'm sitting in my office actually prepping for a Sunday message. And the emotion, we just won. I mean, we just won. The emotion was so overwhelming for me, I cried. I was crying to get into the World Series in 2014. And you know, the reason I was crying is largely because of you. And you probably don't hear this kind of thing very often, but the reason that you touched me is because of watching you be faithful, be diligent, and of course, as a leader, you're going to be critiqued.
Right.
You can't be in leadership without being critiqued, and sometimes people are raging in their critiques. They're thoughtless. They don't necessarily. And so, as a pastor, I felt that over my career at times.
Right.
And so, for you to win, made me feel like I won.
Well, that makes me feel good.
It made me feel like, you know what? The grind sometimes, the impossibilities, the question marks, because I deal with those, and I'm sure you dealt with those from 2006 up. You had the vision, gave you boldness, but then you were tracked back with these narratives of, really, can you? Do you have enough? So for you, let's talk a little bit about those, dark years that felt like everything was being critiqued, you were being judged, and sometimes maybe self-doubt entered in.
Right.
How do you contrast that to the big win?
Well, first, let me say this: if there's anything good in me, it comes from God. Period. And I'm so thankful that we serve a God that gives us multiple chances. Because most days, truthfully, when I put my head on the pillow at night, I can reflect back on some ways that I didn't lead very well. I don't feel worthy to lead. Some days, and a lot of days, I simply do not want to lead. So I appreciate you saying that. You can't do it without good people around you, right? People that are encouraging, people that are supportive. The only reason I get to sit here today in my 13th year of being a general manager I believe is because I've allowed people to speak truth into my life. I've had some discernment along the way. God's given me discernment of who's earned the right to speak into my life and listen to them. I've had great spiritual mentors. You ask about the criticism piece. One of my spiritual mentors, a gentleman by the name of Tim Cash, who was our baseball chapel leader with the Atlanta Braves, always talked to me about the importance of understanding that people are looking at you two ways, with a critical eye or a critical spirit. And thank God for those people that are looking at you with a critical eye. They can help shape you and mold you, like I mentioned. But those that are looking at you with a critical spirit, there's probably nothing that you can do to please them anyway, right? And so just give it away. And then I'm reminded constantly is that, Jesus walked with the disciples for 3.5 years. And he broke bread with them. They saw all the miracles. They could touch him, and they still betrayed him. And what did he do? He forgave them.
Yes.
And so, I look at it as a tremendous blessing to do what I've been doing since I was a little boy. Patrick, I can't recall a day in my life where I haven't dreamt or thought about this game of baseball. Unfortunately, it's been my God along the way too, and I've had to struggle with that. It's been too important to me. Thankfully, I have a wife who has pointed that out to me along the way. But I appreciate you sharing what this, the World Series, what it meant to you, and that's the cool thing about it. I mean, we get a chance to listen to people, all of our fans, and write letters, and they were with their sick mother, their sick father, or it reunited a father and a son together that had been distant for many years. I mean, we get those letters, and that's what it's all about. You understand right away that what you do is much, much bigger than baseball.
Yes, and a reflection of God's heart to encourage everybody that you can win too. That God's grace is big enough for all of us.
Right.
Well, let's talk just for a minute about an executive. What's the hardest and most difficult thing you do being a general manager? I mean, you're at the helm of this massive ship that is the Kansas City Royals.
Yeah. That's a great question. I don't view my job as work. I love what we do here. My biggest challenge, Patrick, is really just being positive every single day, because you know that the people are watching. They expect you to either say something or do something, especially if the team's going through struggles, and we're definitely going through like a rebuild right now with our team. And so it's sometimes it's hard to stay positive because I'm feeling it. I've got a boss, and he wants results, and he wants answers. But I've found that the most important thing I've got to identify with each and every day is, first of all, I have to, I want to represent Jesus, right? I want to just continue to pursue him each and every day and give him all my troubles, knowing that he's handling all my problems. I've got to give that away each and every day. I've got to forgive on a daily basis. That's renewing me. When I find myself feeling burnt out and discouraged, usually I can trace it back to the forgiveness piece. There's a relationship in my life that I need to mend, something I just need to give away. I need to understand that the most important team I have is at home, and in being a husband and being a father. The thing that I can do for my children more than anything else is work really, really hard to keep my marriage strong and serve my wife and love her the way Christ loved the church, sacrifice for her. I've always wanted to do well for her. I've always wanted to excel at my job. More for her than me. I've wanted to make her proud, and that's been important to me.
Hey everybody, I want to slide right in here and thank you for joining us for today's episode. Let me ask you for a huge favor. If this podcast is providing value to you, would you consider subscribing to it wherever you get your podcasts? Also, if you feel that it would be valuable to somebody else, please like it. Comment on it and share it on your social media feeds like YouTube, Facebook, or wherever you populate networking. And one more big favor. If you like the show, please go review it. And if it's true for you, give us 5 stars. And when you review it and rate it, it gives our efforts greater opportunity to grow, and that would mean the world to us. Now let's go back to this week's episode. Even in the pre-interview, just conversations we were having, you said that you went for a walk last night. You guys are just talking through life and connecting.
Yeah.
And I'm sure nobody knows. I have no idea the extremities of your schedule, but I can imagine that when the season's on, you're just from early morning to late nights. And yet you fight for your marriage. Mm-hmm. Can you just for a minute shift gears? Let's talk about home. Let's talk about marriage. And your marriage, what would you say is the most difficult thing about marriage? Just about trying to navigate. You've been married 26 years. Mm-hmm. So there's a lot of grace there. There's a victory. We need to say thank you, Lord.
Yeah.
26 years, and you still respect each other, and you still love each other. Yeah. So talk about that. What's the most difficult there?
The hardest thing is putting her first.
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing, and it's not being consumed with self is probably what I should have said.
Yeah.
Not knowing that, understanding that my family is at its highest level of dysfunction when I'm consumed with me.
Yeah.
When it's what I want to do, or I think it needs to be my way, that's when my family is at its highest level of dysfunction. And but look, the one thing I've learned really over the last 10 years or so, I mean, the greatest part of my day is being able to do something special for her. I mean, it really is amazing that, I want her. I want her to be happy. I want her to do her own thing. She's been a great encourager to me along the way. As I reflect back on that, I mean, it's just it's been amazing to have her support. Without it, I certainly couldn't do what I want to do. And any success that we've had together, we don't have it all figured out.
Right.
And if it was left up to me, it probably wouldn't work out too well.
Right. Well, in your book, you talk about how baseball was first, and it took a little bit to cut you away from baseball being first to actually even engage being married. And you talked about it.
Yeah.
It was a real conversation.
Yeah.
How did you shift that? How did you get there?
Well, it was interesting. I mean, we were. I was actually doing international work for the Braves at the time, and we were on a walk together. And Mary Ann hardly ever gets frustrated. She's very stable emotionally, and she just shared with me during that walk that baseball's like a cult. And she said, you're just so consumed with it. It's all you talk about is baseball, and everything you do, your schedule, everything that you do is consumed with baseball. If we want to take a family trip, it's always about baseball. When we decided to have our kids, it was around the baseball schedule. Yeah. And I'm like, I mean, it hit me pretty good, right? And so I'm desiring to be a husband and to be a father. That's my most important team. That's ultimately going to be your legacy on this earth, and and along with your faith and your love for Jesus. And obviously I was failing, and for my wife, for Mary Ann, to hit me with that had to be something that she had thought about and prayed about herself. And so that kind of stopped me in my tracks a little bit and made me know that I need to do better. My father died at a young age. In fact, he died, actually, as we do this interview, he died 28 years ago today. In 1991, May 14th.
Incredible. And
so my father died young, and I knew at that point in time that, I needed to do better. And my father was a workaholic. He was consumed with his job. I was going down the same trail. That was the example that I had. There's worse examples, I get it, right. But it was still consuming me. And so I needed to change. And so through prayer, through other people praying for me, sharing that with my pastor and my small group, wow. And being transparent about that, guys, I've got to do better. I don't want to take my last breath wishing I would have done better and missing out on certain things. And so even in our leadership style going forward, and I've been blessed to lead departments since I was 27 years old, we've always said, look, we don't miss birthdays, we don't miss anniversaries, we don't miss special occasions. You need to understand your team is at home, and we have enough quality people around us where we can cover. Just the other day, Scott Sharp, who's our VP and Assistant GM for Baseball Ops, he came to me and he said, look, is it okay if I miss this game? My two kids are playing. Well, he knew what the answer was going to be before he asked it, but I appreciate the respect that he had for the position and the integrity of what we're supposed to do here. Yeah. But we encourage our people to not miss those activities and be with their children. So
when you're sitting here right now with me, talking about Father's Day coming up,
right?
How are you experiencing the idea that your dad passed away today, 28 years ago?
Well, my father was my hero for a lot of reasons. His father died early on in his life in World War II. He was born in a little town called Ida May, West Virginia, and his mother, and I never really knew the true story. Some people said he spent 4 years in an orphanage. Some people said he spent months in an orphanage. He never really talked about it. My mother never really talked about the details of that. But several years later, they reconnected with family in Andover, Kansas. Okay, and so his mother eventually remarried. And his stepfather was extremely abusive to him. And I heard a lot of the stories, but one of the things that really struck me really hard and in a very good way, it's been very memorable. I remember knowing those stories and later visiting my father's parents. My father was extremely respectful to his stepfather, treated him with great respect. And that always put an imprint on my mind, the importance of respecting your father, regardless of what he's done, regardless of how he's treated you. You don't have to like it, but you should treat him with respect and class. And my father always did that. And nobody could or would have probably said anything different if he did not. If he chose to not treat him with respect. And so what does that remind me of? Well, it reminds me of the forgiveness piece. Yes. It reminds me of why you should forgive daily when people treat you poorly. Don't give it away. Let revenge die. Wow. Let it go. And so that's what it's meant to me in my life. And so I'll often think about that, is let it go. Give it away.
That's an amazing gift that he gave you. Let's go back to the marriage. Tell us something. What's your favorite thing about being married?
Well, it's just being able to share, intimate thoughts, and to dream together about what we want to do in our future. I mean, our kids are at an age now where we're going to be empty nesters soon, and we're really looking forward to that phase of our life. My wife likes to, to decorate things and how to renovate things, and so we talk a lot about those types of I guess, plans, if you will. She doesn't love to travel. I like to travel, so there's going to be some give and take that there going forward. But that's probably the best thing. And of course, spending time in prayer together is really a special time when I get to hear her heart, and she gets to hear mine. And so those are special times.
Let me jump in again and tell you about two amazing opportunities for pastors, spouses, and senior leaders of ministry that will increase your leadership. And they're both free. I'm talking about monthly Zooms and also weekly process groups. First, we hold a monthly Zoom event that is 1+ hours with Dr. Todd Bowman, a psychologist and human behavior expert, and me. We usually have around 15 to 30 other participating pastors, spouses, and leaders. The monthlies have been amazing to help pastors collaborate around tactics, personnel challenges, and even how to navigate our own inner world. The skills you'll learn and a newfound pastoral community will expand your leadership mapping with everybody you lead. These monthly Zooms happen every month on the second Mondays at 6 p.m. Central Time. And then the second opportunity for pastors and spouses is our weekly process group that spans for 6 weeks. In our weekly process group, we provide tools that guide you into your story and help you rediscover you, redefine leadership, redeem life, and redream ministry. Weekly process groups give time to open your stories as you collect the dots, connect the dots, and correct the dots. Attunement begins with you making sense of your story. When you live with mindful attunement to your story, you'll find that the people you lead will begin to also make leadership sense to you in profound new ways. Our alumni tell us that this is one of the most impactful experiences they have ever had. We place ladies in groups of 6 to 10, and also we put men in groups of 6 to 10. The value of the weekly experience is $900+ per person. However, in this season, we're offering it to you for free. You can see some of our alumni sharing stories on our events web pages. You can find out everything you need to know to get involved in either the monthlies or the weekly process groups by going to redinkrevival.com. I hope to see you there soon. Well, you and Marianne have 3 kids. What would you say the most difficult thing is about being a dad to parent throughout their young years all the way up?
Well, it's all especially challenging. Most days, if I'm completely transparent and honest, I feel like I'm not a very good father. I feel like I can do much better. Again, seeking counsel from people like you and others, they remind me that Satan's a liar.
Yes.
But oftentimes I feel very inadequate. I feel like I say the wrong things, or maybe I say the right things, but at the wrong time. So that's a challenge of mine. But I found that the best thing that I can do with our kids is pray with them. That's the best thing I can do. Wow. And be very transparent when I make mistakes. And oftentimes my son and I have knelt together, our daughters and I have knelt together, and I have admitted to God where I've blown it and I've made mistakes. And God, I need help with the proper way to communicate and discipline. I need guidance there. I just want to be the father and the husband that you want me to be, God. And so those are some of the things that we've done together. But I've never, there's nothing that especially our older daughter, There's nothing that that I haven't failed at in my life that I haven't shared with her. She knows my failures, right? I want her to know that. Because the only thing, Patrick, the only thing I really have to offer is my mistakes in life. I mean, as a leader, that's really the only thing I can truly offer. Just complete transparency. I don't deserve my wife. I had inappropriate relationships before I met Marianne. I don't deserve her. I know that. It's the grace of God. Therefore, I don't deserve my children. They belong to God anyway. And so I realize I don't deserve anything. And so I just want to try to be a character in their stories going forward, where I can just kind of, look, at the end of the day, I just want my kids to come home for Thanksgiving and Christmas, right? I just want to have that relationship with them, and as we go forward. So,
well, I think it's a narrative that often happens inside of parents, and specifically we're talking about dads, where we don't feel like that we are enough, we're worthy, or we're valuable. We see our shortcomings and wonder if we damaged our kids, and yet, in fact, it is the gift of fatherhood and the grace that is in that. And ultimately, it's love, it's transparency, it's vulnerability, and letting them see that you're not hiding, you're not being inauthentic. So I really, really appreciate that somebody of your, what we perceive as your caliber of a leader, that you have experienced the same narrative. Let's switch gears just for a second on parenting. What can your kids do? So your dad, what can your kids do to make you feel special, valued, alive? What can they bring that you're like, man, that makes me feel loved?
Well, I like to hear I love you. I like to hear that I'm proud of you, Dad.
Wow.
We came back from Arizona this year to speak at a banquet, an athletic banquet where my son goes to high school, and my son actually introduced me, and I didn't know he was going to do that. I'd gotten somewhat wind that he might, but I was like, it's not going to be it's going to be awkward. But when he said that my dad is my hero, I mean, that stopped me. I mean, that brought tears to my eyes, and so that was special. But I love all of our children. Are, as I said, they all belong to God, and when I look at them in that perspective, I want to do good for them. I want to do better for them. And so, but where I've made my mistakes, honestly, is I've tried at times to keep them from some of the struggles. Right? You know where some of the potholes are, and you've done what you can to kind of pave their way a little bit. I've made probably my biggest mistakes when I've tried to make it really, really good for them and not let them experience some of the struggles. Now, and so what we've learned is as we move on with this next phase of parenting, and because it hasn't changed for us. I mean, the kids are different phases of their lives, but what we're trying to do is let them fail a little bit more. Let them make decisions. Give them the pros and cons. Let them make the decisions. Don't go down that trail where I told you so. It's like our son's trying to make an interesting decision with what he wants to do, in whether play baseball or go to college, and I've told him, I said, look, here's the pros and the cons. Whatever you decide, I'm going to support you. This is your life. Your dreams are your dreams. They're not my dreams. And so, and I'm going to support you. And I promise you, I'm going to make this commitment to you right now, son. Whatever you decide to do, whether it works out or it doesn't, I'm not going to second guess you. I'm not going to say I told you so. And so we've had this conversation already. So good. I'm just going to support him.
When he said that my dad's my hero, I know the context, the framework of that for you isn't that you won a World Series. That's just a part of a bigger picture. For you, it's that he knows me at home. He knows the real me. He's seen it all.
That's right.
And I still emerge as his hero. And I'm sure priority for you would be that he sees that I'm flawed, but I pursue Jesus with all my heart. I want him to see that most. I want him to see that I love my wife, his mom. I want him to see that I love him and his sisters. I want him to see the man of character. And as flawed as I am, for me to emerge that way has to I could see why you would cry. I would. I mean, that's the gift that we all dream of. I think back to around 2007, I was sitting in my living room watching TV, and there was a local church that was on, and you were being interviewed at the church that you were attending. In the interview, the pastor, which is where you were attending at the time, the pastor asked you, said, you come to church on Sunday morning on game day. You come to church early service, and yet it's game day. How come you do that? And your answer was something that moved me. It caused me to understand you in a different way than what I had understood you before. And what you said was, there are some things more important than baseball. My kids need to be sitting with their dad in church on a Sunday morning.
Yeah.
Could you talk a little bit about that?
You know, what I've always understood about leadership is the leaders are the ones shaping your culture. And whatever the passions of the parents are is going to be the priorities of your children.
Yeah.
And so we have to set that example of what you want your children, how you want them to live their lives, how you want your grandchildren to live their lives, your future generations. We have to set the example. And there's a lot of days, to be gut level honest with you, I'm like, I don't really feel like going to church today.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't want to go through it. The team's not doing well. The first 3 or 4 people are going to ask me about what happened last night.
Right.
With the team, and I love talking about the team, but the motivation at the end of the day is setting that example. Hopefully, it becomes a priority for your children, but more than that, your children's children. And so that's always been our heart for that. And again, my wife loves going to church. She loves being around people. As she began to go to a church, at a Bible-believing church, but she just really grew in her faith, and she's just really blossomed. So it's been natural for us to attend church together.
How would you like to reboot your personal finances this year? How would you like to take control of your money, turning small wins into big results? I want to encourage you to check out my wife Tina's financial coaching business at tinanorris.org. You might be wondering, what is a financial coach? A coach is someone who will personally team up with you to outline financial goals, inspire you with energy, help you stay focused on your goals, and so much more. You can do it all through Zoom, and she provides a free initial consultation, so there's no pain or cost to you for your first steps. Maybe you've been to several Financial Peace University cycles, left with great intentions, but struggled to execute. You need a trainer, a coach, another human that won't shame or judge you to help you stay on track. Tina is a certified expert that will help you with clarifying financial dreams, understanding spending patterns, reviewing all financial obligations, assessing financial and insurance needs, defining a spending plan, understanding your emotional profile related to money, building margin for savings and emergency funds, learning strategies for attacking debt, and referring recommended financial advisors to multiply your tomorrow. And she isn't selling any products, policies, or investments. She is the ultimate financial teammate. As Tina's husband of 30 years, I can tell you firsthand how much of a difference Tina's skills and giftings have made. Our financial portfolio wouldn't be a fraction of what it is today if it wasn't for her. She works with clients that are single parents, everyday people, pastors and church staff, as well as high-income professionals. I've known executives of Fortune 500 companies that manage billion-dollar budgets at work, but then come home to complete financial disorder and disappointments. Shame roars at them as they face the stresses of marriage, kids, and struggling retirement plans. A personal trainer can change the way you think, emote, and behave. If you have friends, church members, clients, or even young marrieds that are launching their financial lives, you will do them all a favor to have them check out this amazing option. If professional athletes need a coach to win the day to fulfill their dreams, then you and I do too. And you won't find anybody better to help you get there than Tina Norris. Set up your free consultation from anywhere in the world today. Go to tinanorris.org to find out all the details. And it's partly a byproduct of your relationship with your own dad, because your dad required you to go to church. He led that. He made that a priority. And then somehow, even though he probably felt like you do at times, and I do, where it's like, am I being enough? Am I leading strong enough? He probably wondered that. But look what it produced in you, and now in your kids. And the fact you get to pray with your kids says that there's there's something normal about spiritual life and measuring everything against God's word and his heart. That now then is very much a part of who they are. When you think of the years that were called the dark years, 2006, all the way, for really there were 4 years that apparently were more difficult than others.
Sure.
You've got little kids at the time. I think if I have it right, Ashley's 11, and then 3 years staggered from there.
Right, sure.
And they're probably have some exposure to news. I mean, you can't protect your kids from what people are saying. You've got people who have some gracious attitudes, and they're just giving facts. But then you have people who are on radio and they're raging. Parents of their peers are hearing the raging.
We had a lot of those fun conversations.
I would love to. Do you mind opening just a little bit of that? What was that like?
Those were great, really. Looking back on it, and I knew at the time that we were going to experience some of that, and so we Marianne and I we'd pray about it to protect our children. God, what do you want them to hear? What you don't want them to hear? Don't let it affect them. Don't let it harden them. We want them to love people. We want them to believe in people, knowing that obviously their faith is in Jesus, but we want them to have strong, healthy relationships and trusting relationships, right? And so we would talk about it, and even though it hurt me, we would always take the following stance. Look, it's okay. It's just sports. It's just a game. People mean well. They're not trying to be overly critical. They care about the team. Just be glad they care about the team. It's okay. I'm a big boy. We can handle it. We knew what we were going to experience before we signed on to be a part of working in baseball and to come here to Kansas City. We knew this was going to be a great challenge. Our oldest, Ashley, became a great prayer warrior throughout the entire time, and she would constantly say, "Dad, I'm praying for you today." And our kids obviously followed the team, and we had a funny story when we first came here, and Robert was 4. Maybe the following, maybe he was 4 at the time, and we brought him into the game on a weekend, and we were sitting in the clubhouse, and Buddy Bell was a manager, and Robert always called him Buddy Bell, right? He'd say, "Hey, Buddy Bell, hey, Buddy Bell," and so he said, "Hey, Buddy Bell, do you ever get tired of losing?" And I'm sitting there on the couch in Buddy's office, and I'm going, "Oh my goodness," because Buddy was really intense. I didn't know how Buddy was going to respond to that, but Buddy handled it like a champ, and so. But we knew it was important to discuss, those important times, because they're great learning moments, and people. I don't think people necessarily, wish poor things or what have you. You just got to let it go again. You know what? So much of this goes back to the forgiveness piece.
Yeah, right.
It really does.
Right.
With everything that we're doing, the critical eye and the critical spirit part of how you have to, look at things in life, and so we don't take it personal.
Which I love how you parented that, because today a lot of parents assume that you just let your kid figure it out. Mm-hmm. And what you were doing is saying, no, we're not going to let them just figure it out. We're going to guide them. We're going to lead them.
Right.
We're going to lead them with heart and attitude. So when they would pick up the energy off of you of forgiveness, positivity towards the people, believing the best in situations, that molded their neural pathways. Their brains actually began to mold. Oh, when my brain sees this, it's not some urgent predatorial action. This is just something that I look ahead and say, it's all going to be good.
Exactly.
And forgive them, let it go.
Exactly.
I love how you handled that. One of the questions I have for you is, you're well known for what's called honesty. That's the word people use, that you are honest. And in the business sector, the marketplace, and in baseball, people love it because they feel like that often they might have a bunch of cloudiness around what people are really thinking. You're very direct in terms of bringing what is. And I admire that. I look at that and I aspire to that. But I'm curious, how does that translate in your marriage and with your kids?
Well, first, let me just say this. From the baseball world, that gets you in trouble a little bit. I mean, John Scherholtz, when he set me down before we came here, he said, look, one of the things that you're going to have to do a better job of, you got to learn to tell the truth a different way. I mean, you've got to be able to. You can't be so honest with things that are going on with the team, and I understand where they're going with that. But I've always felt, you know what? If you have to, it's better to disadvantage yourself in negotiations or in relationships. Be vulnerable, as you mentioned, if you want to truly be understood and respected in a way that moves the needle forward in the relationship. I think it's so important, and so I don't want to be right. I don't need to be right. I just want us to be right.
Yeah.
I just want us to thrive.
Yeah.
And so whatever I can do in the leadership position, as a general manager, as a husband, as a father, just to make sure at the end of the day, we're all thriving, we're all moving forward.
Yes.
And I've found that the people that are in the leadership positions, they have to be the ones most vulnerable. They have to be the ones most transparent. Again, I think the only thing I can truly offer is my mistakes.
Yeah.
And what I've learned from those mistakes. And that's like when one of our players, whether they make a mistake, and when Danny Duffy very publicly got his DUI, I've said in that press conference, that could have been me.
Yeah.
As a young 20-year-old in college getting behind the wheel. When we talk about pornography to our group, and we talk about the harmful effects of pornography. Well, I know in my 20s, when I saw pornography, I know that the distorted view it gave me of what an intimate relationship ought to be about. I know the harmful effects of it. And so we don't look at anybody in a judgmental way. So look, I've been there, I've made those mistakes. But Jesus covered those. He took those to the cross. And so I don't have to be wounded. I can be transparent. I would rather be persecuted for who I am than praised for somebody I'm not. And I'm not going to go through life as a father and as a husband and as a member of this community as somebody that feels like that I've got it figured out, because, Patrick, I don't have it all figured out. And like I said, most days I feel like I am failing. Yeah. And I need Jesus.
Yes.
I need to continue to pursue Him daily, and I need people around me that are going to pray for me and encourage me.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go back to your dad and talk about him a little bit. So you've talked some about your relationship with your dad, but let's dig further into that. What was your relationship with your dad actually like?
Well, my father, as I said, he worked a lot. He was gone a lot. He traveled a lot. His job required him to do so. But he always told us he loved us. He always told us he was proud of us. That I can still feel his embrace and his hand. And he was an affectionate person. He would hug us. And he would tell us that he was proud of us. I remember one of the more memorable times we had is he was going on a business trip, and he was going to be gone for a month. He was going to be in Belfast, Ireland, right? And it was my junior year of high school, and he was leaving early in the morning, and I got up early so I could say goodbye to him, and we had a long embrace, and he told me, how much, he loved me and how proud he was of me, and he knew he was going to miss, part of my baseball season at the time, and so that was very memorable. I mean, some of the wounds that I had, truthfully though, was his travel and him being gone, and there were many occasions during holidays. I remember sitting down one Easter Sunday, and he got a phone call, and he had to go work on an airplane. And I remember my mother getting upset. I remember the hurt of our family, because it was a constant theme during that period of time. Honestly, he couldn't control it based on where his job was in demand. He had to go.
Yeah.
And I've always looked at doctors and nurses and people in the medical profession kind of the same way. What you do, I mean, you get a phone call, you got to go. And so I've always had I've had empathy for people in those situations, but those are some of the things that was particularly stressful. My mother probably didn't handle it as well as maybe she could have. I mean, she resented it a lot, but at the same time, it was what he had to do.
Hey, I want to invite you, if you are listening and thinking, I have so many questions I would like to ask. We would love to address your questions on an upcoming episode. In fact, we may do an entire episode on the one question that you have. If you will simply email us at redinkrevival@gmail.com, we will catalog all of these questions, and we would love to be able to address the things on your heart and on your mind. So be sure to get in touch with us, and we'll take the journey together. One time your dad, you were playing ball, I think in college, and you're complaining to your dad, telling him how frustrated you are with your coach, and I think you're calling him crazy and nuts and stuff like that. And your dad gives this great line to you and says, well, son, maybe it's because he cares about you, and turned it into a positive.
Right.
What were those kind of statements? Or maybe even like the statement where when you have missed an opportunity, there was an opportunity that came up that you were overshot by and they didn't hire you. And he said, well, they're probably going to call you on the way to the airport. And you said that the belief he had in you, the positivity he injected into you in that conversation meant so much. What were those conversations like?
Yeah, I remember the issue with my college coach, and he was tough, right? He was real tough, and it's really very typical of coaches back in that era. And I remember calling home and telling my father that I'm going to transfer. This isn't going to work. There's no way I'm going to play for this guy. And he said, no, you're going to stay right where you are. He said, there's always going to be somebody your whole life telling you you're probably not good enough, that doesn't believe in you. You're going to stick it out, and you're going to persevere through it. And at the end of the year, we'll sit down and we'll discuss it if you still feel the same way. Well, that support, that advice helped me persevere and ended up being one of the best experiences of my life. Coach Slavko, who was a coach at Garden City at the time, still remains somebody that I talked to and actually took my son to meet this past December. And I remember those encouragement times too. When I got released by an independent team, the Erie Sailors out of Florida. And I called home, told my parents that my baseball career was over. I'm going to transfer into coaching. And my father got on the phone, and I explained it to him, and that's a true story. He said, son, I'm sure they made a mistake, and you'll probably get a call before you get to the airport that you're back on the team. And I remember thinking during that period of time, I mean, that's pretty cool. This guy's continuing to encourage me and believe in me, and I knew it was over, but he wanted to keep that positivity alive.
Which, speaking of dads and their impact in our lives, for a dad to believe in us and just to give an encouraging word. We're so busy today, there's so few times that we have to even interact, but just to get a text, just to get a word of belief and energy that I care about you and I believe in you, that goes a million.
One of the things that I've learned, and I've just really understood it over the last 4 or 5 years, but words written and spoken should be to encourage. And encouraging words is what motivates people more than anything else. Just be an encourager. Believe in it.
That's a lesson.
And that's been powerful. But my father was a very positive, optimistic person. I know that came from the Holy Spirit because of what he went through in his childhood. And so I'm just really thankful for that.
Well, let's talk about your spiritual life, and you have a growing relationship with Christ. Just kind of tell us how all that catalyzed. How did that begin?
Well, you know what? My father was the spiritual leader of our family, so I knew the importance of a relationship with Christ. But I'm not sure. I wasn't really committed until I was about 19 years old, away to college for the first time, making choices on my own, having that freedom, and I realized that I wasn't making good choices. And a teammate of mine invited me to a Bible study. I knew it was the right thing to do. I knew that's where I needed to be. So thankful that God was continuing to pursue me during that period of time. But I was probably walking away from my faith those early years of college. And but I went to the Bible study. I recommitted my life to Christ during that period of time. My life didn't change overnight. I mean, I still dealt with a lot of the same temptations and a lot of the same issues. But I knew that the importance of, as you said, and continue to always pursue Christ and to pursue a relationship with Jesus. And that's what we've always tried to do. Patrick, I've always wanted to be transparent, right? So one of the things I grew up, and even though my father was a spiritual leader of our family, my mother was just as much a hero to me as well. And my mother was very tough, though. My mother was tough. Again, my father traveled all the time. I heard every cuss word in the book by the time I was 11 or 12. Okay, they were apart. I mean, my mother, she would let it fly, right? And so that's something that I still struggle with today. Yeah. I still struggle with that, because of Scripture, and I'm in the book of James constantly about controlling my tongue. Yeah. I'm going through Psalms right now, the book that Tim Keller and his wife had made or had written. And on May 5th, the Psalm was talking about this particular day about controlling your tongue and speaking in kindness and how your words impact. And so I'm in process with that constantly, and so that's one of my challenges. I ask people to pray for me with that. Mary Ann knows to pray for me because I want to represent Christ right. But I know that, and oftentimes I've had to apologize to our staff, to people that I work with about my attitude, my language, things that I need to do better.
Yeah. I know in one of the pastors groups we were in where you shared, it was right after the World Series, and you shared during some of the more tense times here at Kaufman that you had done something. You shared what it was. I won't share it to protect you, but you shared something that you did. And I got to tell you, your transparency is so attractive. It's so, because we're all human. Mm-hmm. This is a human experience. We live in a fallen world. The second law of thermodynamics says that everything's fallen apart. Mm-hmm. So it takes incredible bravery and courage to face all of that. And even, some of the hyper reactions or the trauma responses that you probably have that cuss words would even want to come out. For you to be real about that here and to be honest, it feeds our souls because we all know it may not be cuss words for another person, it may be something else, but we all got our stuff.
That's right.
And so thank you for even going there. One of the things you said this morning is that in your devotional time, and so I just locked in on that. Tell us just a little bit. What's devotional time mean to you? What's that mean?
Well, my day begins during the season. It begins. It still begins early. Not as early as it does in the off season, but I always go to my study and spend time in prayer. Spend time reading, trying to get my heart right, and try to sync my heart and my mind together. So good. There's always. Something that you're dealing with, of course. But I find when I don't do that, I mean, my day just begins to unravel much, much quicker. And so I have to take that time. My staff will tell you that even during the season, even on game days, sometimes I'll get away for an hour and a half. I'll go ride my bike, maybe get away. Listen to, I'm fanatical about music. I love Christian music. I love all types of music, but I love Christian music. That picks me up. That feeds me. Anything that you put into your mind is how you're going to perceive life and how you're going to, and ultimately what you're going to become.
Yeah.
And so I'm guarded against that. I mean, more so today than ever before. I want to make sure I'm feeding my mind and my heart with uplifting and positive things, and not shying away from real issues. That's not what I'm saying. But when I have those positive influences in the Word of God, Scripture, it helps me manage the day.
Let me break in one more time and tell you about RedInkRevival.com, REDINK Revival.com. I want to encourage you to sign up for our blog e-newsletter there, as every month it will hit your inbox with a provocative blog post with topics about theology, biblical architecture for emotions, and how understanding the human brain is so helpful in giving more insights to various biblical texts. We also will feature updates on our monthly events to help you keep up on the ready for everything that is available to you. Also, I'd like to remind you, if this podcast is serving you with valuable insights, to subscribe to the podcast. If you think someone else would benefit from it, please review it, comment, and share it on your social media platforms. If your friends are privileged to know what's helping you, who knows what God might do in their life with the same resources. That would be a gift to us, and it would be a gift to all your friends. We're holding you in our hearts and believing God with you for a year of supernatural increase. I just love it. I love who you are. I know that you're a work in progress in your mind, but from a fellow human, I admire you. I appreciate what you're fighting for. You may not feel like you've gotten the ground you want, but you're fighting for it, and that gives me courage to fight for it as well.
Well, I appreciate what you do. My heroes have always been coaches and teachers and pastors and missionaries. I mean, they've always been my heroes. So
thank you. You played baseball, and as you said, you have never had a day in your life that you hadn't thought about baseball. But in that, you ultimately were dreaming of being a coach. How did you get into the executive offices? What brought you to be a GM?
You know, most of it goes back to decisions that we've made, what we felt was best for our family, right? So my father always told me, work every job you have like it's the last one you'll ever have, okay? So it's always been my mindset in everything that we've done. And so when I began as a college coach, I had a couple opportunities to get into scouting with a couple of organizations. I immediately said, no, I'm not interested. I'm focused on coaching. Then the Atlanta Braves called. They offered me the same position. I decided to go meet with them in Atlanta, and I decided I was going to take that job for 4 years and get back into college coaching. So I started scouting. After 2 years, the Braves called and they said, look, we want you to come down to Atlanta and be the assistant director of scouting. I said, I'm not interested. I'm focused on what I'm doing in scouting. Plus, I knew in my heart I wanted to get back into college coaching. But Mary Ann and I had made an advanced decision when we got married that when we had children, she was going to stay home with our kids. Now, Mary Ann was the breadwinner. I mean, she was making $40,000 at the time in 1996 with sales commission for a company called Spot Image. They sold satellite imagery. We were living in Northern Virginia, the Washington, D.C. area. If you know anything about that area, you can't survive without two incomes, right? Absolutely. And so I was making $26,000 as an area scout. We decided that, you know what, if we were going to fulfill what our mission was in raising our children, we were going to have to make that move, even though it was not what I wanted to do professionally. And so we sold our house. We actually paid $4,000 to get out of the house. It was our first home. We bought a little townhouse just right east of Dulles Airport. And we moved to Atlanta. Atlanta was affordable at the time. I got a raise. I was making $32,000, but we could live in the Atlanta area on one income during that period of time. So that's how the journey began into this line of work in baseball.
I love how you stayed with your passion, your gifts, your surrender to Jesus about it has made room for you that might have surprised you, but really took you places.
It did.
Well, let's talk a minute about professional athletes. What do you think is the most difficult part about being a professional athlete, because you're not just a GM. Anybody who knows you, reads about you, knows that you kind of take a fatherly role in their lives. You care about them, and you see all of the dangers that are around them. What do you think is the most difficult part about being a professional athlete?
Well, there's a lot of things that lead to that challenge. I mean, this field out here, this arena that our players perform in, it's a breeding ground for insecurity, right? Players have the freedom and the choices of manhood, and they have the responsibility of boys. It's not their fault. They grow up with so competitive. They got to be the best of the best. They get stuck in that world of comparison. Where it's robbing them of their joy, it's robbing them of their peace, it's robbing them of their harmony and their contentment for life, everything that you need to be successful. But they're a part of that world, and they have to constantly self-evaluate and compare to how they stack up to others. And so you have to know that going into it. And at the end of the day, Patrick, the most important thing that we can do is just continue to believe in them and encourage them. And not judge them when they fail. And so people ask me all the time, why are players so inconsistent with baseball chapel?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And a lot of it is because when they do mess up, they stay wounded, they don't feel the grace, they don't feel the love, they don't feel that somebody's continuing to pursue them. And so what we've tried to do is just say, look, it's okay, you're going to make mistakes. Yeah, you're a new Christian. You've given your life to Christ, but guess what? Now it's going to be even harder.
Yeah.
But the great thing is now that you have that thing called grace, that we have in Jesus.
Yes.
And that's going to allow you to not stay wounded in life and continue to put your best foot forward. And you've got a group of people now around you that understand that and care about you, and we're not judging you. And so that's the thing that we've always tried to do. We're not judging you where you came from or what you've done. We're just going to love you. And we're just going to continue to move forward each and every day with expectations that it's going to get better in life.
Absolutely. We like to say that God loves you, He likes you, and He's in a good mood to you. Because sometimes, don't we,
I like that,
as sons and daughters of God, think that I'm the child that God loves because He has to, but He doesn't really like me. I kind of irritate Him. I'm the one that agitates God. But when you think of God biblically, He's a God who is in a good mood to you. And that good mood is the goodness of God that leads our heart to turn to Him.
Right.
And so I think it's incredible that you have taken that posture as an influencer in their lives. You have nonprofits. I just want to make sure we close out with you sharing some of your passion around the Urban Youth Academy, the Underground Railroad, and then of course you have a great book. I want to encourage everybody to get More Than a Season, the book you wrote. I loved it, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
But share a little bit about your nonprofits.
You know, one of the things that that we began to pray about, and to talk about after the 2015 season, knowing that what we were probably going to experience in 18, 19, 20, and 21, because we had made a decision that we weren't going to trade our players, and we were going to add to our payroll with some long-term contracts that were going to be a little restrictive of what we could do going forward, and that's where we are right now. But we began to pray and seek counsel about, do I really have the energy and the toughness and the desire to go through this again?
Right.
Okay? And so one of the things that God put on our heart was, you know what, you've got to do a better job of serving others and doing things in the community, and that is going to help sustain you and give you another outlet other than just be completely focused on what you have to do with the team. And so the Urban Youth Academy has been a big part of that. You know, the diversity is huge. I don't buy into the lie that we're in harder times now than we were before. I think this is perhaps the greatest time of our lives, where we have positive examples that can really stand out and really make a difference. Are the challenges different? Yes, but we're still living in great times. And I think we need to step up as leaders, and leadership is needed today more than ever before. And we need to step up and say, you know what, I'm not going to judge. I'm going to do what I can to bring people together, different races, different backgrounds, different educational backgrounds, bring people together. And the Urban Youth Academy has been perfect for that, where we're trying to bridge the gap between the urban and the suburban and the rural parts of Kansas City, break down barriers, bring people together through the game of baseball and softball. And so where, that's the racial tension that exists today it's so much better than it was back, in our parents' days, okay? Right. But we still have to continue to try to understand each other. And so that's been a passion of ours going forward. And what I've found is that kids today, they want that. Yeah. They want that togetherness. They want that unity. And so we have to kind of separate whatever the ills of our parents and our grandparents are. We've got to let that go and focus on the next generation. And so whatever bias that you have, whatever marinade you come from, and how you perceive race relations in this country, you've got to let that go and focus on the next generation. So good. The Underground Railroad, slavery, it wasn't about black versus white. It was simply about good versus evil. It's always existed in this country. And so that's our message, and that's what we're trying to portray. Yeah. And so for the next generation, just to bring people together and to have that harmony in this community. And so that's what we're working towards. We know where that's ultimately going to come from. It's going to come from the hope and the faith and the love that Jesus is all about.
Yes, absolutely.
And that's why I love the Gospels so much. The Gospels are always about, putting others first. Leadership begins and ends with putting others first. Jesus came here to serve, not to be served. And that's why I've always been fascinated and in love with the Gospels.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Absolutely love it. Well, Dayton, this has
Thanks,
been
Pastor.
incredible.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for what you're doing, and
thank you.
Appreciate you having us.